everyone, and welcome to Tech Tactics Live, episode Garage. I'm actually in a remote location. We're actually in Emeryville, California. We're at this beautiful dealership, Fantasy Junction. I think I've got some photos here that I'll share with you of all the treasures they have in here. And it's a great backdrop for our show today. We've got a great show for you, a wonderful guest, and we're going to be talking about the guest and the backstory of Sally Carrera. So without further ado, I want to make sure that you click the like button, subscribe, comment, and for those of you that are watching live tonight, be sure to put your name and where you're from in the live chat area, because we are going to give away some very cool autographed prizes here at around 8:20. So make sure you put your name and where you're from, and that's all it takes to be included into the raffle. So without further ado, let's bring our guest over tonight. Jay, come on over. Jay Ward, Creative Director of Franchise at Pixar.
Yes.
Thanks for having us here, arranging all this. Thanks for coming out. I'm actually here in California because in a few weeks, we're going to be here for Car Week. And more importantly, we're going to be here for Works Reunion Monterey. So for those of you that will be in the area, make sure you join us because it's going to be a fantastic event. And we're at the Bayonet Black Horse Golf location, and it's new for us. It's gorgeous, and we'll have a great time there. So hopefully we'll see you there. So last time I saw you, we were together at Works Reunion Amelia Island.
That's right.
We had dinner together, and you shared with us some very cool stories about how you came about to Pixar. In the July issue of Porsche Panorama, we featured your car Little Blue and all of that.
Yeah.
Let's just kind of hit the highlights of everything to just give people an idea of how you kind of came about in the car scene, how you ended up at Pixar. So we'll start with the car scene. You've always been, people always ask us, do we just love Porsches? And I think what I've learned from you and I in the time that we spent together, we're car guys, car gals. We love all makes and models, but we liked it enough to make it sort of part of our career. So how did it all start with you?
Yeah, I like you. I'm a car guy. First of all, thanks for having me on. Hi, everybody. And yeah, I am a car guy. And I grew up, my dad owned a kind of a used car lot in Kansas City, Missouri called Ward Automotive. He'd always buy and sell these cool cars. And so I grew up with an automotive love. He would bring home Ferraris that, this is back in the, when I was a young guy, he'd get one at a time.
Did your parents bring home Ferraris? Because mine didn't.
My dad did, and everybody thought my dad was a drug dealer, but he actually was a car dealer, and he would fix them up and sell them and do something else and move them around. But anyway, the cars were always there for me. In fact, when I was in high school, he picked up a Carrera, 3.2 Carrera Coupe, and that's the first time I had an experience of a 911 that I was like, a modern 911. I was like, this is pretty cool. My uncle bought a 77 or 78 turbo in Gar's Red, and he said, this car will actively try to kill you, which I found fascinating.
Yeah.
So that
piques a young person's interest.
Yeah, all those things added to my love of Porsches. I grew up, and then of course, when Sally came into the movie Cars, I then began a relationship with Porsche Cars North America.
Yeah. So my father as well dabbled in buying cars at auctions and such, and growing up we had let's say champagne taste and a beer budget. So we always had to work on the cars ourselves, right? So my dad he didn't like being under the car for some reason. So he would just throw me wrenches and sockets and, change the oil. And that was sort of just the norm. And as I was able to drive and, we finally were able to buy nicer cars or the cars that he was selling, we'd keep them for a while. It's been our life. And so you and we're very fortunate to be in the industry that we've loved as a kid.
Absolutely.
And part of what we'll be talking about tonight is not only your influences as a kid, but how you kept the Cars franchise and what they were portraying accurate to the car world, which we'll get to later.
Yeah.
But I really want to talk about is Little Blue. The 76 911S.
Yeah.
That I believe the story is, and I don't want to give away the whole story because you want to read it in Porsche Panorama.
Yeah.
But that car was sort of like, you didn't even know about it until you moved into a house and kind of looked across the street.
Yeah, wasn't looking for it. If you said, which 911 do you want? I would say I want a 70 911. That's 70 or 71 because I love 2.2s. That's my favorite.
Yeah.
And my neighbor, this older lady said, I have a 67 911S. And I go, Really? Yeah. And she opened the garage door and it was a 76 911S.
Okay.
But
still very cool.
Still cool.
Yeah.
It was a California car. It had blue tags. It had never left the Bay Area.
And it was her husband's car, right?
It was her late husband's car. And basically all the paperwork was with it. It was bought brand new at Carlson Porsche in Palo Alto.
Mm-hmm.
A gentleman had it for like only a year. And it's hard to understand, but back in the mid 70s, when you bought a new 911, there wasn't a whole lot of a warranty on it.
Right.
76 was a problematic year in California because they put the 5-blade fan on them, thermal reactors, the cars ran hot and they had problems. California cars specifically died. And this guy had so many problems with it, after a year, he sold it.
Oh.
This woman's husband bought it and most of the demons were exorcised. It had thermal reactor cheater exhaust. They had done some things to make the car run better. And he drove it until he died in a plane crash in 1980.
Oh my goodness.
Yeah, so
Wow.
she lost her husband and both of her kids in this plane crash.
Oh my
which was
goodness.
just tragic.
Oh,
and then she drove the car between 80 and 99. And by 99, she was getting too old to drive it. And so at that point, she parked it, had hit some things with the car. She went out and bought the new Beetle, the yellow Beetle when it came out.
Mm-hmm.
And the Porsche sat between 99 and 2013 when we moved in across the street.
Now, I know you had experience with Porsches with your father, but did you own a Porsche before this one? Actually, I'm going to actually step in a little bit.
Okay. I had Volkswagens as a kid. I had some experience with Porsches. I had bought a GT3, a 997 GT3 for a little while that I had bought as like a project car, fixed it up and sold it and broke even on it. That car's worth 3 times what I sold.
Oh my goodness! So you had that car before?
I had a 997 GT3,
Oh, wow.
but I had not had much experience with air-cooled 911s.
Okay.
I had hot rods and custom cars. So working on her car was actually exciting for me because I learned as I went and saw what's easy on them and what's difficult on them.
Right. And how they are, you can trace the lineage back to like Volkswagens and such, but it's very unique in a lot of ways, especially that particular year.
Yeah, and ironically, my buddy at Pixar who worked with me on cars had and still has a 67 911S. His name's Gary Schultz. He was in the R group, and he'd let me drive his car many times. So I understood that analog feeling of an early 911, how everything's kind of in the perfect place when you get in the car and the way it feels. So you could still feel that DNA in her car, for sure.
But the original intent was not for you to become the owner of that car.
No.
Like you just saw that as a cool project. You wanted to help her get it back on the road.
That's right. She had seen I had old cars because I have 3 or 4 old cars already, and she said, "Will you help me get it running? I feel bad." And she spoke about it like her husband was. She felt she'd let her husband down by letting the car stop running.
Yeah.
Yeah. So when I got there, the car was covered in dust. There was an oil puddle underneath it where the magnesium block had just seeped all the oil out.
Right.
It was just really.
How long was it sitting before?
99 to 2013, so 14 years it sat. Not started, not ran, nothing.
Wow.
Nothing.
And nothing was locked up, like the cylinders and.
Engine was not locked up, but oddly enough, the hood was locked up to pop to get in to get the battery. I couldn't get the battery out.
The cable was locked.
Cable was frozen.
Yeah.
So that was my first step of many of be very careful when you're bringing a car back after sitting for 14 years. But miraculously, the worst thing was it just spewed oil, smoke for a long time because all that crud had kind of baked to the block.
Yeah.
So it burned so bad that I thought this engine's toast. I'm gonna have to rebuild the 2.7. And it turned out, and I went to her actually, this is the deciding factor when she said, "I think I'm gonna sell the cars." I said, "Miss Yvonne, I got the car running for you. It kind of drives, everything's working. I did the most I could do mechanically.
Yeah.
I think the engine has to come out and be resealed."
Yeah.
I got 3 quotes to have the engine resealed, and they were all a lot more than her budget.
Right.
And she said,
and then what is she going to do with it once it's rebuilt?
And that's what she said as well. She goes, "I can't even drive it." And I got her 3 bids. I said, "Whatever you want to do." And she said, I think I'm going to sell the car. Do you know who would want to buy it?"
So what year was that when she was considering all of this?
By then it had been 2 years in, so it was probably 2015, probably 2015 she was gonna
So in 2015, a 76, like the market's still pretty soft for those cars. So if you get an engine rebuild quote, that's probably more than at that time the car is worth. Yeah, I can see why she might want to pass it on to someone else to love and take care of.
Yes, and not only that, it still needed body work. The paint was faded, the interior was torn. It was not a nice car.
Okay, so I've seen photos of your car in its current condition.
Yeah.
And it's immaculate. So you had to restore.
Yeah, and I'm very much a preservationist. I think you are too. When you find something original, you want to maintain the good parts of the original.
Right.
So yeah, there it is with the 5-blade fan. Like you can see all the California emission stuff on it. It is so rare to find a 911 that still has the 5-blade fan on it because it killed them.
Right, and most people just took them off.
Yeah. So I put an 11-blade on, put this on a shelf carefully. I put a trumpet oil cooler on it, factory oil cooler kit. And did all those things it needed. But yeah, when I bought it, you can see it had the chrome kit, the chrome trim kit around the wheel wells. It had the fog lights, which were not factory fog lights, so they were dangly.
Right.
Somebody added fog lights to it. It had the sugar scoop headlamps. It sat at California, US ride height.
4x4 ride height.
Total 4x4. So what I did, that's the day we pulled it out. So basically what I did was I put it to a European spec. I saved the paint. I didn't, only thing I did was I brush touched paint and I repainted the bumpers because they were so chipped up. I had to repaint the bumpers and the rockers.
So otherwise original paint.
Original paint, original interior. I had to replace just the seat bottom of the driver's side, and I found the right material and had it sewn in so that I didn't have to redo the whole seat.
Nice.
So really trying to preserve what was there.
And that car has been in this area all of its life, so I'm assuming no rust.
That's the other program. 76 is the first year that they dipped bodies, so it's already a rust-resistant car, which is good. But yes, never left the Bay Area and garaged its entire life.
Wow.
So that's a big part. You can see all the factory decals were there. Again, I wouldn't go searching for a 76.
Right.
But when you find a really honest car that was never turned into a fake turbo, never had a slant nose, never had fender flares, that's rare.
Right. Most of the cars, because they weren't loved, they were converted into something else. And now to find one that is completely original, that's really rare.
74 to 77s were the Rodney Dangerfield and they got no respect.
Exactly.
And now they do, so that's good.
And now especially the market, we're at Fantasy Junction and talking about the prices on some of these cars behind us here.
Yeah.
A 76 911 now too is like through the roof.
It boggles the mind. It really boggles the mind. My buddy bought
the car hasn't changed.
No,
the car hasn't changed.
So my buddy Gary Schultz bought that 67 911S when we worked on the movie Cars, or maybe we were on Monsters Inc. I think he paid like $16,000 for a 911S back then.
Oh my goodness.
For a 67 911S. I go, Gary, that's a lot of money. Are you sure you want to spend that much money on it?
Oh my goodness. Oh.
That's what, 230
Well,
now?
we all have stories of the Porsches that was offered to us, and for whatever reason, we weren't smart enough to just kind of do it and hide it.
How would you have ever known that the market would have gone this crazy?
It's bonkers. It's bonkers. We just did an article on manual Cayenne GTSs.
Yeah.
A manual Cayenne GTS just went for $91,000, and I get it. It is a rare unicorn of a vehicle.
Yeah.
But $91,000 worth? Like I just can't wrap my head around it. But we're very fortunate, like I said earlier, to be in this world and the cars that we do have, and it's great to see the values of them go up, but that's not the reason why we own it, right? That's not the reason why you have that car. It's not the reason why I have my car. It's like, we enjoy it. We have a story behind it.
Yeah.
So to wrap up that little blue story, do you still live in that house, and does she live across the street, or?
So sadly, she was not doing very good health-wise, and as I fixed up the car, she actually ended up having a stroke because she had been living alone in this home with her husband, both her kids gone. It really is a tragic story. My wife befriended her, took care of her, and actually helped get her into a senior living center. Now she's thriving, which is great.
Good.
She's doing good. They hang out and have lunch together. In fact, when the car was finished, when I got the car really fixed up and done, got the engine sorted, I picked her up and brought her to a local car show, and I registered the car in her husband's name.
Oh,
so it's cool.
Oh, that's very cool.
Yeah.
Oh, was that the show?
That's her. That is Miss Yvonne with the car, first time on the road, and I took her to the local rent-a-car show, the little town I live in, and she was just beaming.
And that's why you own the car?
Yeah.
Has nothing to do with value?
No.
Performance, yeah. I mean, and a Accord could probably crush that car.
Yeah.
Modern day, but that's not what it's all about. That's not why we own our car. So.
Yeah, that car has such a special story.
So for more details on that story, check out the July issue of Porsche Panorama.
Right.
Let's change gears into Pixar.
Yeah.
How in the world? Like I have my cousin. She's sitting over there that she loves to draw. My son who loves animation. To them, you have the dream job, but from what I know, it wasn't like a dream start.
It is a great job, and it's funny. Pixar I've been there for over 22 years. So I started there when Bug's Life had just come out.
Oh my goodness.
So I started there at the very end of 1998, and it was a much smaller studio then. I got hired because a buddy of mine was a sculptor there and said, hey, my buddy Jay's really smart and he's good with numbers. He has a great memory. He would be good in the art department. And he's got a degree in art, which I did.
Oh, okay.
And so they hired me to work in the art department on Monsters Inc. early on. And it was just from a recommendation, and the pay was incredibly low. Like a PA was like literally poverty.
But again, it was the opportunity and...
No wife, no kids, no house. I'm like, okay, I'll do it.
Wow.
And then once I got there, the other great thing about Pixar is they see the ability somebody has. You don't have to go, hey, I want to do this. They literally go, we can see you're really good at this. We want to give you this challenge. And then that's how you really move up there.
And that's part of, you were around, let's see, Cars was released around 2006, correct?
That's right, yeah.
So you were there in the late 90s, early 2000s?
Yeah, so I started in 90, very end of 98. So 99, I was working on Monsters Inc.
Okay.
Monsters Inc. came out in 2001.
Okay.
By the time Monsters Inc. came out, I had already started on Cars.
I was about to say, if it was released in 2006, that means you were probably working on it several years ahead.
And Cars was going to come out much earlier. The problem was that Cars and The Incredibles were kind of possibly, either one could have come out first. But when Incredibles got the go-ahead to go first, that gave Cars even more time. So we actually slowed down the crew a little bit and brought the speed down while Incredibles got finished and then ramped the movie back up. That's why they came out in that order.
And why don't you share with folks about, because I think this is fascinating, of how you at Pixar got connected to the Cars franchise.
Yeah, so I already had old cars, like I said. I had driven old cars into work when I was working on Monsters Inc. I had Big Daddy Ed Roth rat fiend character in my office. I worked on a car magazine called Hop Up Magazine. So they knew I was kind of a gearhead. And a buddy of mine said, hey, we're going to be making this movie about cars. You should check this out. You're a car guy. And he opened this flat file and he showed me these drawings, early drawings.
Wow.
I go, yeah, I'd like to work on that. So I was the first production person outside of him pulled onto Cars. And the director, John Lasseter, was making the movie. And as they were making stuff, I'd say, actually, that's not right. A Hudson Hornet would have bias ply tires. He'd kind of look and actually, honestly, a 993 Porsche is cool. That's the last of the air-cooled ones, but the 99s. And so he began to kind of realize I really knew a lot about cars and pull me more into those conversations.
So did you have an opportunity to sort of influence which characters and which cars were going to be made into animations? Like, it could have been a Corvette, but I don't think there's a Corvette car, right? So, how did they determine those cars, and were you a part of all that?
Yeah, and by the way, it's a total team effort. Like Bob Pauly was our head character designer. Bob Pauly designed Buzz Lightyear. Bob Pauly designed Lightning McQueen and made it. Like, he is a character designer, and he's a gearhead too.
Okay.
But I probably have a geeky knowledge of cars in some level, so they would still go to me and go, we're thinking about this car for this, but what do you think's better? And I'd say, actually, look at this.
Yeah.
So that I did help in some of those casting decisions, or choosing a Fiat 500 that would be a 59 because it has the coach doors.
Right. So it was nice for them to have a gearhead on site to sort of legitimize the characters, because if you had the wrong hubcaps or wrong lug nuts or whatever it might be, the gearheads would pick it out. Like, we totally would pick it out if it had the wrong tire treads, that had modern tire treads or something like
and the big thing for us is authenticity. That word is so important for us, that no matter what, if it's about robots or fish or cars, that there's a sense of authenticity to it, that you feel like they did their homework. I hate watching a movie where it's about whatever it's about, and you see some character walk by in the background with the wrong haircut.
Oh, yes.
The director's son. So, that authenticity is very important to us.
And did you know, or I guess everyone has to hope that every movie is such a hit, but I think Cars has just been, my kids were born in early 2000s, 02, 04, so right when they were starting to watch, that's when the Cars,
they're in the sweet spot.
They're in the sweet spot. And now my son, who was really at the sweet spot of watching Cars, and I can't tell you how many times I've watched it, he just got his license a few months ago, right? So now these kids that grew up with it are driving cars.
I just met Danny Suarez, the NASCAR driver, who we turned him into a die-cast character, and he said, I had a Cars poster on my wall as a kid, and now he drives some NASCAR.
That makes me feel so old.
Yeah, so to answer your question, you don't know how well a movie's going to do. You have no idea if it's going to be a hit or a failure. You have no idea. Typically in a movie, it comes out, there's a big splash when the movie comes out, it does well, box office, products, fans, and then it just slowly tapers off. Like our current movie, Luca, people are loving Luca right now, talking about it, but a year from now, Luca would go away, next movie would come out. Cars did the opposite. It was actually kind of small, it did good at the box office, but it wasn't like #1 for 5 months or something. And it slowly began to build, and keep in mind, DVD was very a hot market.
Right.
So parents got the DVD of it, and they realized kids watch it over and over and over.
Oh yeah, and not only watch it at home, but when we're taking the road trip in our Odyssey, we throw it into the ceiling.
Yes.
Or even if we're going to the grocery store, it was watching it over and
That's
over.
right. And so cars actually got bigger in 07, bigger in 08, and then it finally started.
And I think the merchandise side of the Cars franchise probably adds to longevity, right? Because like Luca, you take for example, there's only so many things you can make from the movie Luca.
That's right.
But Cars, you have all those characters,
vehicles,
and people, kids, take them with them, right? They play with them.
Yeah.
So.
And even Mattel had our partner for Diecast, they had no idea how crazy it was going to be when it came out. They kind of said, all right, we're going to do, 6 or 10 of these cars, and we'll just see how it does. And it just turned into its own thing. It just blew people away how successful it was.
We did have a question here that I'll hop into.
Okay.
And this is from, let me see, that's behind my phone here, from James Winner. He said, at Disney, there's a ton of Cars merchandise, but zero Sally Carrera. And, for this show, I asked you to bring some cool swag, honestly, because I couldn't find swag. I brought some of my own swag from home for the show.
Yeah.
But if you go on Amazon, if you go on eBay even, there's very little Sally Carrera stuff. So that means it's rare.
It is kind of rare.
But why is it rare?
Well, you and I were talking a little bit before this. Bonnie Hunt did the voice of Sally, and she got a hold of me probably 5 years ago and said, hey, I realized I don't have a whole lot of Sally stuff, and can you send me some things? And I was embarrassed.
How is that Bonnie Hunt?
Bonnie Hunt didn't have it. Well, I think it might have been for a fundraiser or an auction. I don't know what it was.
Or she gave it away to kids or whatever.
Exactly. And she said, do you have more? And I literally went through my stash, and I was like, I don't have a lot, Bonnie. It's hard to find.
Yeah.
And one of the reasons it's hard to find is that Mater McQueen are by far the most popular characters, so Mattel makes the most of those.
Okay, yeah.
But the other reason is Porsche is a licensed vehicle, so there's a licensing agreement. They can't just do whatever they want. They all have to run it through Porsche. So it does.
So Lightning McQueen and Mater,
yeah,
it's a made-up vehicle.
Those are in-house design.
So there's no licensing when they produce all that.
And when you watch Cars, it's this mix of what we call in-house design, like McQueen, Mater, Red the Fire Truck, Flo.
Okay.
But then you also have real cars, like Sheriff is a 49 Mercury, and Ramon is a 59 Impala.
And so those have licensing.
Those are licensing, right? So we have agreements with those manufacturers to feature the vehicle in the movie. Yeah.
Wow.
And that was the first time we ever did that. Really, Toy Story, Buzz and Woody were in-house design characters. Yeah.
Very cool.
Yeah.
So the movie comes out in 2006. I remember in PCA, it was all a buzz. Like every event we had Sally Carrera stuff. You guys sent posters.
Yeah.
My very first Porsche parade was in Portland. And I remember that was, I believe it was 2000. Portland was 2006 or 2007. I think it may have been 2006 Porsche parade.
Okay.
Well,
somebody will
know. Somebody will call me out on it.
No, you're wrong.
But you brought Sally Carrera to Porsche parade.
Yeah.
And I know it was for sure Portland, and it didn't run. It was pushed into place.
Yeah, it was probably pushed into place because that's safer. The problem is if somebody didn't know what they were doing, you could just jump in it and move it around.
Right, but it could start.
It ran. It was a running.
It could start. I do remember that. I did peek on the inside.
Oh, you were supposed to do that.
I know, and of course when they told me that, that's when I really wanted to peek, because all the windows were darkened, the eyes, you couldn't see past it, but when you open it up, you could tell, okay, now, from the looks of it, all of us diehard Porsche fans, it's got 2002 headlights, it's a 996, definitely a shortened wheelbase, obviously the smile and the bumper. But tell us what you can of what Sally Carrera started.
It's a very interesting story. Okay, so just to go back, as we're finishing up the movie, Cars is going to be coming out, and we were working with a gentleman named Howard Buck, and he used to do vehicle placement for Porsche in North America. So if Tom Cruise drove a 911 Turbo in a movie, Howard Buck was the agent through this place called this Vehicle Services place that would put the Porsche in the movie. You wouldn't call Porsche directly. He would handle it. Okay. So Howard Buck had a great relationship with Porsche for many, many years. And he said, hey, I think it'd be cool if you guys built a life-size Sally Carrera, like a real one you could drive. And we're like, sounds like a cool idea, but I don't think we have the budget to do something like that. And
now I can't believe,
well,
back then, right?
Yeah, but keep in mind that it's an expensive proposal, and then from a movie making standpoint, the filmmakers go, does this make people want to go see the movie? Maybe,
okay.
right?
I got you.
So Howard said, but what if you guys built a life-size McQueen and Mater? And then we went back to Disney, our parent company, and they're like, I don't think we're gonna do it. Howard said, are you cool? We build a life-size Sally, you guys oversee it creatively, but Porsche would build this. And we said, okay. So as they start building the Sally, and I'll talk about building the Sally, Disney saw and said, you know what, I think we probably do want to build a life-size McQueen and Mater. So it actually did kick off all three of these cars being built and touring the country together.
Oh.
So Porsche,
So was Sally the first one that was built out of all the characters?
we started on Sally first.
Oh, very
and there was
cool.
a shop down in El Segundo. Eddie Paul, who did some of the cars for Fast and Furious, built Sally. Howard Buck had found him to do the job, and he also ended up doing Mater and McQueen.
Okay.
So Porsche donated a 99 996 Carrera Coupe, a 99.
But those are O2 headlights.
Yes. So the car had the 99 style headlamps when we got it. It was painted in a very interesting, almost like a garnet maroon color I hadn't seen before. It had unique wheels. So
it looked like it had C4 wheels on it.
yeah, it was an interesting car. I don't know if it was a press car. I don't know the whole story behind it, but for whatever reason.
But you got it from Porsche.
Porsche sent it directly to the shop to turn into Sally.
Oh,
It wasn't
okay.
like.
You didn't just go on Craigslist and
No,
buy
exactly.
it. Okay.
Porsche wanted to supply the car to make sure that it was something that came from them because they were funding that project.
Huh,
right?
okay.
So
was it a good car or was it?
I think this car had been used, if I'm not mistaken, this was a long time ago, but I think it had been used by technicians. So
Okay.
Porsche technicians had learned how to R&R parts.
Okay,
So
gotcha.
this car had probably been taken apart and put back together
Okay.
a million times. And
Gotcha.
so they're kind of done with it at that point.
Right.
So it actually was the perfect car to use. for
Because
Sally.
now, if that's 2006, then the 997 was coming about. So if
Yeah.
that's a training car.
Yeah.
They're probably done.
Yeah, we started on in 05, so by then 05, the 997 was out.
Right, okay.
That's right, that's
Yeah.
right. So it was probably the perfect car to let go of.
Okay.
So the car went down to Howard Buck's shop. We took a drawing of Sally, blew it up to life size, and we realized the car had to be 7 inches shorter. So they cut the car right down the middle, opened the doors, cut the door down the middle, and pushed it together 7 inches, and then reattached everything again.
Wow.
Cut the roof, moved the A-pillars up,
Yeah.
and moved them out. So the A-pillars came up like 3 or 4
Right,
inches.
because then you see the hood, the roof line like arches. up.
Yes,
Okay.
yes. So that was the two biggest things they did to make it, because people say, oh, you can just put eyes on a 911. It doesn't look like Sally when you put eyes on a 911.
Yeah.
She really is a character.
Yeah.
So there was a lot of things we had to really proportion to make it feel like the character. And then the whole lower fascia, that whole mouth was hand sculpted by our sculptors and then applied to her, to the front of her.
So before we talk about, because I've always wondered why eyes on the windshield instead of using the headlights as eyes. Before we get into that,
Yeah.
can you share with us, someone decided they wanted a 911 for a character
Mhm.
in the movie.
Mhm.
How was that discussion?
Yeah.
They called Porsche Cars North America and said,
No, it's a very interesting story. So we had McQueen, and way back McQueen was more like a NASCAR style car. Early on in the story, he looked like a more stock car style car. And if you remember who Dave Deal was, he was a sketch artist that he did the Armor All Man. Dave Deal did a bunch of really great cartoons in the 70s and 80s, like he did Cartoons magazine.
yeah,
Dave Deal. We had him do some just pie in the sky ideas, and he drew a 60s Mustang and made it Sally like Mustang.
oh, Mustang Sally, yeah,
right?
for sure.
Cool car. Oh, maybe this could be McQueen's girlfriend. She's nostalgic. She's like a Red 66 kind of
Yeah.
car. The problem is a 60s Mustang has a very broad horizontal grille, which looks like,
A mustache.
right. So the problem was, it was like
Oh.
McQueen going out with Tom Cruise. So then we said, let's just start with a clean sheet. What is a masculine shape or a feminine shape? And it's usually a masculine shape is more square,
Right.
angular, and a feminine shape is more round and curved.
Right.
A 911 is an extremely curvy car,
Mhm.
and there was no radiator grille opening in the front.
Right.
So you had the smooth, round chin that felt very feminine and beautiful, and it helped it read like a female car, because it's hard to be able to tell what gender a car is.
Right,
and
right.
So those two factors help. So we go to Porsche, we pitch, this is the first car company that we say, hey, we've actually got to get permission.
Right.
We sit Porsche down, we show them the thing, we said, and we want this character to be Sally. And I remember, it was Barron said to me, he goes, well, you know that Porsche is, the owners are like 86, 87% male.
That sounds just like Barry too.
Yeah, and he says, are we sure we want to make a female character? And I said, well, Barron, if it's 86, 87% male, where do you think you need to grow in your ownership? And he goes,
Nice.
oh, that's a good point. And, you know, they had seen from the Boxster and from the Cayenne coming that They were
that market, yeah.
They were getting better gender balance,
Right.
so it made sense and they signed on.
Wow. And was there, why a 996? They could give one to you because they were available, but why wouldn't they want you to promote the 997, which was a current car at the time?
Yeah, good question. So when we started on the movie in 2000, 2002, 996 was very current.
Yeah.
And Sally was designed in that style. As we progressed, here we are coming to the very end of 04, early 05, and Porsche says, hey guys, we have a new 911 coming. Maybe you want Sally to be the updated model.
Yeah.
They sent us some very secret early drawings and early photographs, and we passed on the 997 because the headlights were so round on the 997 that it really made the face feel down there. And we really want to keep Sally's eyes up in the windshield.
So that's why the 02 headlights, because they're the least round.
That's right.
And keeping your eyes up, so to speak.
Those turbo C4S later style headlights really lended you to not see a face down there. That's right.
Ah.
Yep. So you really naturally just go up to the eyes in the windshield and the mount down below. And to answer your question about why in the windshield, very simple analogy. If you were drawing a car's character as an animal, right? So you know the Chevron commercials have the eyes and the headlights, right?
Right, yep.
That, if you think about it as an animal, is a snake. The body's on the ground and the face is all the way at the front. So my eyes, my mouth are all at the front. That's a snake, right? By putting the eyes in the windshield, it's the head of a dog or of a horse, right? So the mouth is in the front, the eyes are way back here, and this is all snout.
Right.
Think how much more acting ability, how much more you can move the character around and it holds up. If it's a snake and you turn to the side, the eyes go, you can't see the face. But with a horse, or a dog, you can move way around to the side and still make contact with eyes and mouth. That was one of our biggest reasons.
Cool.
There was a Disney short in 1952 called Susie the Little Blue Coupe. That was the first time that the eyes were put in the windshield of a little living car in that short. And that was
I'm going to have to Google that one.
Great short. Susie the Little Blue Coupe.
All right, so let's take, we've got some questions here. Okay. I know we probably have some winners here shortly too, of the prizes. So Chris Henley would love to see Sally Carrera driving down the road. Can the driver see through the eyeballs?
Yes, so it's a great question. One of the mandates we had when building the Sally and the McQueen and the Mater was they all had to run and drive. In fact, we did our premiere for cars at the Charlotte Motor Speedway in Charlotte, North Carolina, Lowe's Motor Speedway, and the cars did a lap around the track. Sally has these two pucks on the windshield with a magnet behind, and there's a bus wrap like material, white material that you can see
one way.
Yeah, you can see out, but it's difficult.
Yeah.
If I could do anything over, you know the old Cher song, if I could turn back time?
Yeah.
The one thing I would fix was Sally's eyes are two independent pieces. And the reason we did that was so that we could position them left or right or forward. The problem with that is every time she gets moved somewhere and somebody doesn't know, they just stick the eyes on.
Make her cross-eyed?
Yes. They make the eyes wide, they make the eyes narrow, and they never get it right. So I would have put a bar behind it that always locked the distance between the eyes, that you couldn't get the distance wrong. It's amazing, but just messing up the distance a little bit messes up the whole face.
Now, one of our members who, they weren't sure if they spoke to you because it was a while ago.
Yeah.
But when Sally was brought to parade, someone had mentioned that if you had more time, then Sally's eyes could have been linked to the steering. Is that true?
I don't think we ever planned on doing that. The only place, those are called lollipop eyes.
Okay.
And we do that in the parks. So all your parade vehicles in the parks have the eye that goes side to side. Those are great. The problem with that is the eyelid would have to move as well. Otherwise, it kind of looks a little broken. You can't move them very much. So it's actually not a big benefit.
Okay.
Yeah.
We've got a question here from Costanzo Rodriguez. Why the rear tattoo? I think I know the answer to that. I mean, like that, like back in 2006, like that spoiler goes up and like what do we call them?
We called it the tail end pinstripe. That's what we call it.
Pinstriping.
Correct.
Other people might call it something else, but we're going to call it pinstriping.
And the reason we did that on the Sally car was, the idea was she used to have a more wild life in Los Angeles.
Absolutely.
She had slowed down when she moved to Radiator Springs and it kind of left that behind. But McQueen, it gives him the first nod because McQueen's whole thing is he has these preconceived notions.
Right.
He thinks Doc is a grandpa car.
Right.
He thinks Sally is just some high-strung lawyer.
Right.
As he gets to know the characters in town more, every one of them has a little something that gets
adds a little flair.
Adds a little bit of the backstory, right? Yeah.
And I noticed to draw those pinstripes on the back, if
Yeah.
that was a true 996 rear spoiler, that
Yeah.
would be an accordion
Yeah.
and not that. But I guess you can.
We had to fudge something.
You had to fudge a little bit. I'm going to call you out on that one,
Yeah.
but that's okay.
By the way, if you ever go see that Sally, and she is at the Porsche Museum
Yep.
in Stuttgart,
Yep.
that pinstriping is hand done.
Oh, is it by someone famous? Or?
Pinstripe, he's a famous guy in the hot rod world for striping, and
Yeah.
I can't think of his name right now. He was like grew up in the era of Von Dutch, but a little bit younger.
Yeah.
And he striped that car by hand.
Yeah, I remember seeing the scene. I think they were at the pylon huts, and she pulls away, and that's when he sees.
Yes, and she turns around quickly.
Yeah, turns around.
Home lands on her head. Yes,
exactly.
Right. She's a little embarrassed. That's right.
Were there any other colors considered for Sally?
Ooh, great question. So the funny thing is, when you look up that color, it's an unusual blue. I think we tried to look at the colors for the cars that year, like Sally's supposed to be an 02 911.
Yeah.
And if you look at 02, I don't think that color was off.
No, but it's very close to PCA's 05 Club Coupe, California Azure.
Yeah.
And I've always wondered, I think Sally's probably a little bit more blue than silver compared to the PCA Club Coupe, but I always thought it was kind of close.
Yeah, I think
But I realized it was not a stock color. Like that blue is not a stock color.
No, and in all honesty, McQueen was red, so he was a warm color. We wanted a cool color.
Okay.
Right, just
Makes
to make
sense.
it very simple, like a warm and a cool together. And that blue just looked good on her. Most likely we had a whole chart of colors, and John probably just picked one from that chart. Yeah.
So one of the other things that you mentioned at our dinner with regards to the characters, like Bonnie Hunt, right?
Mm-hmm.
Bonnie Hunt in the 2000s, I don't think was, #1 movie star or TV star that you said, hey, we're gonna get the hottest actor and create a car and have that actor be the voice of that car.
Yeah.
Like it's not that way. You kind of delved into a little bit more about that.
Yeah, and this is really almost an ethos of our whole studio, is that we don't cast people first and then make a character look like the actor that we've cast. What we do is we think from a story standpoint of who that character is, and then we find the best voice to bring that character to life. What was great about Bonnie Hunt was she knows how to do improv. She has this sort of warmth and sparkle to her voice, but she also has a lot of wisdom in her voice. And when we paired her with Owen Wilson, we really loved how well the banter worked between the two of them. So that's why she was a shoe-in for that.
What about the other characters that you brought on for the casting? Was it hard to find? Like, how do you Toe Mater? Well, Toe Mater is probably kind of obvious.
But he wasn't very big back then. He was part of the Blue Collar Comedy Tour. He wasn't a household name yet. No, not really.
Okay, I mean, I think of it as obvious.
Yeah.
Because
now you
now I do, but then he wasn't as popular as
No,
this.
we have a whole casting department that would help us, but also honestly, the director, again, going back to John, he really thought about who should play all these parts and had a really good understanding. Sometimes we would, even back on Monsters Inc., we would watch movies and listen to actors' voices and go, who's the best person for that? Who would be really funny as that? Like, Billy Crystal is Mike Wazowski. Perfect, right? John Goodman is the big lumbering guy for Sully. Like, perfect. Sometimes it works out.
So the storyline from the first Cars movie, and share with everyone sort of your responsibility for the Cars franchise.
Yeah, so after Cars, I moved on to work on Ratatouille. Before Cars was done, I was already working on Ratatouille.
Oh, wow, okay.
Then I produced a short called Presto that was on the front of Wall-E. So I produced a short. And then I went on to Brave. So I worked on a bunch of different things. And then, Cars 2 came in there in the middle. And then after Cars 2, I went on to Brave. And Cars just kept getting bigger and bigger. And John came to me at that point and he said, I really feel like we need somebody to manage Cars as a franchise full time. And I said, I don't know if I can do this and manage an art department. Mm-hmm. And he said, well, what would it be like to manage Cars as a brand full time? And so I wrote out this job description of really overseeing it as a brand, which a lot of filmmakers don't do. You're done the movie, you chuck it over the wall,
right.
And let it,
But there's it has so many, points of interest in all different directions, the Cars franchise. So.
Yeah, and luckily, it never went away from me. Even when I was working on other movies, I was working on Cars lines for 5 years of my life while I was working on other films. I worked on the Cars Resort in Florida while I was working on other things. So Cars was always part of my life. And because I knew so much about vehicles and cars, I would get sent out to do all these things. When we worked on Cars Land, they sent me to Hershey, Pennsylvania to buy antique car parts to put in the queue area. That was me.
Wow.
Help pick the music, all the car songs. Details like little hubcaps or little tires on Luigi's, gauge as you're walking. All those little things I helped with because I'm a car person.
And your responsibility is around the world, not just.
It is global because we have different consumer products and a different audience in Asia and a very different audience over in Europe as well. So we work with toy partners and, and studios. Literally, Disney has offices around the world, and they'll call with unique projects, and I'm the person that usually helps them creatively.
Because it's global, did the stickiness of the movie, take off at different points in different countries, or were they all kind of together?
It's funny because, you think of Cars as, the first Cars as a very Americana, Route 66. You think, oh, this isn't going to really play very well in these other markets. But it actually turns out to have really a deep meaning for certain markets. They just love that movie. Cars universally love, but certain markets really latched on to the Cars franchise.
And you, as little kids watching it, they could watch it without the sound and they still enjoy it, right?
Yeah.
So it's just the view of it all.
And hopefully as a parent, you still watch it and you go, man, I still saw something I hadn't seen before.
Well, I think that's what Pixar really has done for parents is, I think when we grew up, whatever the little kids, we were probably watching Johnny Quest or whatever it was.
Right.
Like it wasn't really much for our parents to watch.
Yeah.
But now the movies that you're producing, the kids enjoy it for the animation, the cuteness of it. They get some of the jokes, but
some of the humor, some of it goes over their head.
90% of the humor's for the adult.
That's right.
And that's why the adult's taking the kid because they're enjoying the show just as much.
Yeah, and for me, it goes back to our parents' generation, or our grandparents' generation. Movies didn't have ratings. They all had to work for all ages, right? And the only way you could do that was just tell a universally great story.
Right.
So we just tell great stories. Yes, they're animated, but animation it's just a medium. It's a way to tell a story. That's all it is.
We have another question here. Was that really Paul Newman's voice in Cars 3?
Yes, that really was. So what happened was, in Cars 3, we wanted to harken back to Paul Newman. Obviously, he passed away. We knew there was no actor that could ever replace him. If you go to Cars Land, there's a Doc character there, and to me, we had to do it, but it just doesn't sound like him.
Oh.
Paul Newman, the last movie he voiced was Cars. The very last movie before he died was Cars, which is amazing. And so for Cars 3, we went through what we have is called ADR. It's all the recordings he did, like every line the man recorded that didn't get used in the movie. Every time
stitched it all together.
Stitched things together, got a hold of his family and the Paul Newman Foundation and said, can we do this and work on it.
And it sounds so natural, like that's amazing. Editing is amazing.
It's real lines. It's not stitched, some of it is real lines that didn't get used in the
movie. That you just didn't use in them. Oh, okay.
Yeah.
We have another question.
Okay.
Was it hard to convince Michael Schumacher to voice the first film?
Ooh, that's a good one too. Ferrari, as you know, Luigi was a Ferrari fan, so we worked with Ferrari on the first film. I don't know if Ferrari brought Michael Schumacher and asked for him to be put in, or if we asked. That's a great question. That is Michael Schumacher voicing an F430 at the end of the movie with the two Maserati agents with him. And it's a great question. And we used Sebastian Vettel for Cars 2. We used Lewis Hamilton in Cars 2 and Cars 3. So we've used Formula One drivers a number of times, but the Schumacher moment at the end of Cars was pretty special. I'll need to harken back to my record.
You have to get back to us on
the official answer. I can do that. I also, before we're done, I want to talk about what happened to Sally and how she ended up at the Porsche Museum.
Okay, we still got, wow, time's flying. It's 5:42, but we still got a little bit more time.
Okay.
Do we have our winners? There we go. Let's do our winners. Lewis Roman, congratulations.
Luis Roman and Joe.
Yep, and Joe, we will get these out to you. I will somehow get these to you. Just make sure you send us your address information and we'll get them to you.
They're both priceless.
Yes, they are, because you signed them, they're priceless and you can't find them. Let's see, question here. How many real Sallys exist and who owns them?
Ooh, very good question. There is one real Sally.
Oh, they only made one?
One of one.
Well, there's tons of...
there's more McQueens and Maters.
McQueens, yeah. So
this is what happened. When we did the first ones, Cars 1, first Cars, Mater, McQueen, and Sally, those all had gasoline engines. You could start them, they had brakes, they had engines.
Yeah.
Okay? What we realized,
but they weren't real cars.
They were based on, Mater and McQueen were based on, started as real cars as well.
Oh, they did?
all started with real vehicles that we built into the characters.
I thought it was like a form and they just put like a...
The bodies were unique, but the undercarriages, the engines, the transmissions.
It's still a real car. It's not like a go-kart underneath.
No, real car.
Oh, okay.
So we wanted, but the problem with that was we realized most of the time these vehicles were statically displayed.
Yeah.
And most places, like an indoor mall, you can't bring in a vehicle that has gasoline and oil and coolant and park it inside of a shopping mall. So we actually didn't do ourselves a big favor. So for Cars 2, when we did a new Mater, new McQueen, we did a Finn McMissile, those have all electric chassis where they can be driven in remotely.
Okay,
and we realized
that makes sense.
Makes a lot more sense.
Yeah.
But that's why there's only one Sally.
Ah.
Now, this actually, if I can talk about it for a second. So what happened to Sally, right? When we were done with the movie Cars, the agreement was Porsche could take Sally and tour her around. So that's why you saw her at a Porsche parade.
Yeah.
She ended up going around the world to dealerships around the world.
Oh.
She went all the way down to Australia. She was seen in many, many markets around the world. And then after a number of years, we'll get to that. That's where she ended up. That image you're seeing is where she ended up.
Yeah.
But what happened was she went back down to Howard Buck in Southern California, and he called me one day and he said, "Hey Jay, Sally is just sitting here and she doesn't look very good. She's pretty beat up. She's been sitting in the warehouse. She's got stuff all over her. There's junk. I can keep storing her for Disney, but I feel like she belongs somewhere."
Yeah.
Like, it's sad.
Yeah.
I went down and looked at her, and she, like, rubber was falling off. She was, you know, when a car sits for 6 or 7 years, stuff starts going out.
Right.
And I said, "Howard, I can't put her at Pixar. I can't get gas and oil. I can't park her in the lot."
You could have called PCA.
I could have called PCA, but I did something better.
Yes.
I got a hold of the Porsche Museum,
That makes sense.
and I said, "Guys, I think this belongs to you. I think Sally should come home to you." The interesting thing is, when we've done Cars 2, we did a research trip, and we were at the museum within a month or two of when it opened.
Mm.
And here it was 5 years later, almost
Yeah.
to the day, they said, "We want to have Sally back and have her for the 5th anniversary of the museum." And the Porsche Museum did the coolest thing. They paid to get Sally back over to Germany. They put her in the restoration shop downstairs.
Yeah.
They fixed her up from end to end.
So they fixed her.
They did.
Oh, okay.
She has to be perfect. Everything has to be perfect to go in the
Of
museum.
course.
They put sport exhaust on her. They did an all new interior. I said, "Hey, you won't even see the interior." They said, "It doesn't matter. It has to be perfect."
Oh.
So she has
a finished interior?
brand new, perfect interior. Sport exhaust.
You've got to call Porsche Museum and see how we can get the interior.
No. Scott, you can't look at the inside. You can never see the inside.
What? They did the interior and we'll never get to see
That's
it?
correct.
Oh.
But it's all done to their specs.
Yeah.
And then that picture you're seeing, that was the 5th anniversary event. They invited all the original voice talent to come back, the German voice talent of Cars, to come to this thing.
Oh.
They fired off confetti
Yeah.
cannons. It was the German voice of Sally, the German voice of McQueen, the German voice of Vader. Put out red carpet, and they let every kid in the museum breathe that day.
Oh,
And then
that's
they
awesome.
put Sally inside, they brought her up in an elevator, there's confetti all over from the cannons, and the kids started making hearts on Sally's hood out of confetti. And I was like, this is
that's
what it was meant to be.
fantastic.
It's what it was meant to be. So, and that's where she lives.
Wow, and I've gotten to see her there, and I've got my picture, just like the picture I think we showed
Yeah.
with you. So did Sally get a numerous number of repaints, or?
As far as I know, that's the way she was painted. She has been chipped over the years, but I think the only thing they had to repaint was probably the front bumper. I think felt needed paint because it's a flexible material.
Okay,
Yeah.
but it looks perfect now at the museum.
Oh,
and
they
it's
just, I mean, they replaced gaskets and seals and.
man, but now you've got me wanting to see the interior, because it was
I
a
have
mess.
pictures. I have pictures.
It was a mess when I saw it in
Yes,
Portland.
because it was just this car they just cut up and they thought nobody
Yeah.
will ever see the inside.
Right. Wow. So we have more questions.
Yeah.
Which Cars movie is Jay's favorite? Is that really a question?
Yeah, that's hard. You love all your children,
Yeah.
but the first Cars, I think, has such a special place.
That's what I'm
Cars.
thinking. Like, that's like just the natural.
And it was such a long film. It was like really this labor of love for us. You know, the Cars 2 was a fun film, and it was really celebrating the cars going around the world doing crazy things. Cars 3 had a really cool emotional backstory with Doc.
Yeah.
But the first film was just this pure story about a guy who was just moving too fast in life and needed to slow down, was missing all these things around him.
Yeah, and that's today.
So many of us.
So many of us, and as I'm playing with my cell phone here during this
Yeah.
this filming,
How dare you.
well, it's just so I can see what people are asking. I mean, it's good, but it's bad,
Yeah.
right? It's like I can't just have a normal conversation with you because I'm trying to provide some input into this interview, so to speak. How involved was Porsche in the production during the movie?
So that's a great question. Not a huge amount, and the reason why is we came to them and said, we made this character, may we put this character in the movie?
Okay.
Once we did that, and they agreed to it, we had the character drawn, but we needed to turn her into what's called a model packet. And that means that she'll be modeled in the computer. So I got a hold of Porsche North America and I said, do you guys have a 996 C2 that we could borrow to photograph? And believe it or not, they did not have a press vehicle to loan me. This is in 2002. And so Sonnen Porsche up in Santa Fe loaned us a customer's 996 C2.
Oh.
Didn't have the turbo twist wheels, obviously,
Right.
but it was the right body. And we photographed it from all sides, the badges, we got up on a crane and took a straight down shot, did all the.
So this is, you can get it into the system, so then you can manipulate it?
Well, sort of, you do orthographic view, so it's built in the computer by hand, somebody's looking at it, but those drawings help tell you proportionally what to start with, and then you're gonna
Okay.
push and pull. The funny thing is that car, we finish it up, we sent it back to Sun and Porsche, and then like 6 months later, the one that Porsche of North America finally sent to us was too late. We didn't tell them like, oh, thanks for giving us the car, the reference photo. And we kept it for like 2 days.
You do realize they will know now.
Oh, yeah. Yes.
It's all good. It's in the past. It all worked out fine.
Yeah, I did a presentation for our local, I'm a Diablo chapter member, and I did a presentation for them on the history of Sally, and I have pictures of both those cars, that first one and that second car that we photographed.
It would be cool to find out, because you probably have the VIN to Sally.
It's probably somewhere, yeah.
So to see where that car was originally, if it was a PCA training car, or was it, an individual's car that they bought back for some reason.
Yes.
Like, that'd be kind of cool to know.
Rob Sass from your magazine, from PCA, feels like he knows that car. So
he's just feeding you a line.
Okay.
Maybe he does. I don't know. I'll have to follow up with
that. We should have another conversation.
So we've got about 10 minutes before the end of the show, and what I wanted to find out was, of course, being Porsche fanatics, we love Sally, and seeing that there's not much available to buy anymore on Amazon, there's not much on eBay.
Yeah.
So what's the future for Sally? Or will there be another Porsche that will show up in the Cars franchise? I know I'm asking you all these questions, and even if he knew, he probably couldn't tell me. But should there be hope that there'll be another Sally or another Porsche or another Cars movie for that matter?
Well, we can't replace Sally, right? Like Porsche, when we did Cars 2, they said, can you update Sally to a 997? We said, you can't really update a character. The problem is it doesn't look like that.
It has to be another character.
You have to be a different character. And we actually did kind of do 997s in Cars 2, if you look there in the background.
Yeah.
But we have a new Cars series coming out next year. It premieres fall of next year, and it's called Cars on the Road, and it's going to be on Disney Plus, and it's an episodic series.
Oh.
And it's a series of shorts.
Yeah.
And you will see Sally again.
Really? Very
cool. So
cool.
hopefully some new Sally merchandise, you never know.
So let me see, let me just thumb through here. Oh, that's a good one, because I wondered this too, from James Day. I've always noticed 301 PCE on the license plate. What the heck is that for?
Great question as well. Some of these people watch this stuff.
I'm telling you, these people are sharp.
They know their
I told you they would bring their A game.
They brought their A game.
Yeah.
Okay, so here's what happened. If you watch most of the license plates in the movie, they are our own personal made-up plates. Mater's plate is A113, which is a famous secret Pixar code we put, so that's Mater's license plate. Sheriff and Red have like number 1, number 2 municipal plates. Her plate is actually a real California plate that is assigned by the California DMV. So California, when you make a movie, at least it used to be, when you made a movie in California and you had a car featured, the DMV would issue you this safe license plate that didn't belong to any vehicle. It was like a movie plate.
Oh, a movie plate, okay.
And that's the plate number they gave us to use for Sally, because we couldn't have a California plate and use our own number because it could have belonged to somebody else.
Oh, so it's the state issued this random plate.
State issued random plate. She's the only one that has that. All the other ones have this kind of interesting meaning, like Fillmore's license plate is George Carlin's birthday, who voiced the character.
Okay.
Luigi's plate is the longitude and latitude of the Ferrari plant in Italy.
Oh.
So they all have these interesting things.
See, we're always looking for these Easter eggs in movies, right? And so, I've stared at that license plate a number of times, and I'm trying to think,
301
is it a coupe? Is it?
Yeah.
What is it?
I wish it had deeper meaning than that, but that's it. In fact, I'll bet you there's some movies from that era that probably might even have that same plate number.
Huh.
Never know.
And you see also in Pixar movies, characters go from one movie to another movie, right? I mean, they do carry over a little bit?
No, you won't.
No?
You won't see. No, the worlds connect, but we never put characters from other movies unless it's like an Easter egg. So,
or like a voiceover, people doing the voiceover.
Oh yes, we've had the same actor do different voices in different movies for sure. We have used actors more than once. Bonnie Hunt was also in Monsters Inc. She was fourth rank. She was the trainer character in Monsters Inc.
Oh, okay.
She was in Bug's Life as well. So we had worked with Bonnie Hunt a number of times.
Ah.
Yeah.
So very cool. All right. So to wrap it up,
yes,
we will see you at Works Reunion.
You will see me in Monterey at Pebble Beach. Yes.
So if you guys have more questions about cars, about Lil Blue,
which will be there, Lil Blue will
be there. Okay. And what are you driving these days?
Right now, honestly, I just have a press car. I use different little press vehicles. This week I have a E450 4MATIC, which is nice.
Yeah.
But I had a new 992 for a week. Porsche loaned me the 992.
The Touring?
With a manual, but it was an S with a manual.
Oh.
No sunroof delete, rear steering.
Oh, okay.
Full leather, guards red.
S or non-S?
You can only get manual. You can't get a non-S and a manual anymore. You can't get a base Carrera.
A base Carrera
with a stick anymore.
Right.
Yeah. So I had an S stick, non-sunroof, guards red, extended range fuel tank, rear steering, leather sport package.
And what did you think of it?
It's kind of hard to fault. I mean,
Yeah.
you know, what do you?
It's pretty amazing what that car can do.
Yes. Yeah. They've gotten bigger and heavier. It's much more of a GT car now.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know if I like it more than, let's say, a 991. It's different. It's a different car. You know, the non-naturally aspirated motors are.
I feel like each year the cars, they do obviously get a little bit bigger.
Yeah.
They can drive softer.
Yeah.
But if you put it in Sport Plus and you throw them around corners and you take them to the drag, like you
can get that analog feel.
I mean, you can get that analog feel,
Yeah.
but it's at like a much higher level as opposed to driving your 76. Just going to the grocery store, you're probably going to get to that limit of, ooh, that was kind of fun or that was kind of scary. Like these newer cars, to get there, you have to be doing some kind of crazy stuff.
I go back to my 997 GT3. That was one of the best cars I ever, honestly, like that car.
If only if you had it today.
It was GT silver metallic, beautiful car, and it was so analog that you kind of go, do I want to drive that to the store? I could,
yeah.
Maybe I'll jump in my wife's, Honda or something. A 992, even the most hardcore version, you can drive.
You can do everything.
Everything. So that's where I think it's improved, and also your phone works in it.
Yeah.
It didn't work 10 years ago.
I know, yeah. Exactly. Yeah. Well, we are at the top of the hour. I want to make sure I thank Pirelli for sponsoring Tech Tactics Live.
Thank you, Pirelli.
Thank you so much for Fantasy Junction for allowing us to be here. And I think we're scrolling through some more of Fantasy Junction's website on the cars they have. Be sure to like, comment, and subscribe if you enjoyed the show. Jay, thank you so much.
Yeah.
Great to see you, and I'll be back out here in a couple of weeks, and we'll have some fun at Porsche Reunion.
I'll see you at Car Week.
Thanks, everyone. Bye.
Bye.